What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Crypto 99. My name's Danny, and in this video, we're going to be looking at a pretty cool ICO project called COTI, the currency of the internet. We're going to go into what COTI is, go into the website, the team, the positives, the negatives, the hype, the social media, just like we do in every review video. And I'm actually going to do this one a little bit different. Kind of like I did my last week in review video, I'm going to start off the video by giving you a grade, just like you got in school. I'm going to give this project a grade, give you a little recap of what it is, a short paragraph, and then go over some positives and negatives for you to take away. I know these tend to be a little bit longer for my review videos, so I wanted to kind of give you something up front to take away. If you're only able to watch a few minutes at a time, you can watch the first 2 minutes and pretty much get what the project is. But before we get into that, this is a sponsored review, but it's just that, a review. I feel like a broken record when I say this every time. I obviously give you my unfiltered opinion in every single one of these, and if you've ever seen one, you kind of know how that works. But with that out of the way, let's get it going. So, like I said, COTI, digital currency built for payments. That's basically what it is. COTI stands for currency of the internet. So before we even jump into any of that, I'm going to give you a little recap. So I gave this project an A-, and I want to keep that in mind as you're watching this review and say, okay, what would I give this project? What do I like? What do I not like? So what COTI is, it's a revolutionary digital payment processing system supported by a native currency to disrupt the means of digital payment. I know there's a lot of competition there. We're gonna go through that. Current payment systems, i.e. PayPal and credit cards, have large fees associated with them, particularly for cross-border transactions, that the merchant usually absorbs for intra-continental, but if you're going mainly cross-border, you're having to pay a lot of fees, or someone's having to absorb those, as well as additional problems like centralized governance and costly buyer-seller protection. COTI aims to solve these issues by using an interface tied into the COTI cluster, which is their distributed ledger technology. We'll go over that. They actually have a simulation on their site that we'll go over and what exactly that is. This cluster uses a consensus method based on trust scores that they assign. There's a method they assign trust scores to each transactor, with each new transaction validating two others with like scores. This DAG-based structure, which is that's an acyclic graph structure. That's all that is. Base structure allows for a near exponential scaling with low to zero fees. So on the surface, sounds really good. Let's dive into some positives and negatives briefly. So positives, it's a revolutionary technology with the cluster and their trust chain, what they're calling. They actually trademarked that. They're aiming to solve many issues with both of these things as a combination, solve a lot of issues. They have exponential scalability, which is huge in blockchain tech. Or really, this isn't blockchain. This is distributed ledger technology, trustless technology. It's not even a blockchain. It's not blockchain 5 or 6.0. It's totally separate. Large team with big name experience on the team, and the space needs disruption. I've kind of talked about this before, that some of these just previously accepted models of society need disruption, whether we think so or not. Technology has advanced at a pace that nobody could have predicted, so a lot of this stuff needs to get disrupted. Negatives. Competition is very, very strong. I mean, think about the competition they're going up against. I mean, basically, they're going up against a lot of other digital currencies that you could accept as payment anyway already, and then they're also going up against PayPal and all the other credit cards. So the competition is super strong in the space. They have a very long roadmap, which if you know anything about me, you know I don't really like projects with roadmaps longer than 12 to 18 months. So in my opinion, very long. We'll go over that. And then they have with a long roadmap, they have no current product to really look at other than the simulation of the blockchain. So they have no current MVP. They're not an alpha, beta testing of anything. So kind of culminating that all, I gave this an A-. Keep that in mind and kind of make your own decision as we go along. So we're going to start just like iTest website. Website's good. Pre-sale registration ends in 3 days, 12 hours, 39 minutes, and 4 seconds. You need to do the KYC if you're going to participate in the pre-sale. So make sure you do that. It started today and ends in 3 days, 12 hours, 38 minutes, and 54.32 seconds. So make sure you do that if you are interested at all during this video of the project. I'll have the links for everything down below. But like I mentioned kind of in the overview, digital currency built for payments. So I mean, the website is relatively bare bones because they don't have like a lot to show off. Here's our product, here's our this, here's our that. It's not flashy in terms of marketing, but it's got a lot of great information. So there's $49.8 trillion of consumer-initiated transactions annually from merchant to consumer, consumer to merchant. Obviously, merchants don't typically pay consumers. But payment systems are not keeping pace with e-commerce, and we've talked about that a lot. E-commerce is globalizing at scale. But payment systems are doing their best to keep up, but the fees and the scalability of those payment systems are not there yet. I've said that a couple times before. I traveled to Greece last fall, and one of the big hurdles I had to get over was built-in risk mitigation methods from banks and traditional credit card payment processors for you going overseas if the transaction's not recognized or all this kind of crap. You have a pretty good opportunity for that to get kicked back. There's a ton of fees that you have to pay switching currencies or transferring money. Using your card over there is ridiculously expensive. There's a lot of expense tied into that. And that's a lot of things where digital currencies come into play, but then you have scalability and governance and all kind of crap, which we'll go over in their white paper. But that's what COTI is trying to solve. It is going to be the currency of the internet. It's basically PayPal with a native digital currency and no fees. That's kind of what it is from a scalability standpoint. But it's built for payments. I mean, it's convenient, it's fraud resistant, it's trust-based, it's instant licensed, which is cool. That are really kind of embracing regulation, which is nice. You have to if you're going to be a true currency. And then 0 to low fees. Here's a sample, I guess, of what their product would look like. And you can see, if you can see how small this is on the top of your screen, middle to top, I guess. They have trust scores for each person. You can see the merchant. You can see their trust score. And then they can also see the consumer's trust score, and it'll give you, certain discounts based on those trust scores. Or if the trust score is low or high in one direction, the payment will be contingent on completion of the act that's being paid for. Distributed ledger technology that outpaces current crypto standards. That's pretty standard, no pun intended. You kind of knew that was coming. But their distributed ledger and their trust system is pretty neat. We'll look at the simulation here in just a second, and we'll go over the team and the roadmap in the white paper. So this is pretty cool. This is the simulation, and I'm actually going to start this over so you can see what this is. So this is the COTI cluster that I talked about. This is the distributed ledger. It's based on the directed acyclic graph, which I talked about a little bit in the beginning, and it's a simulation. It's based on a mathematical model using this base protocol. For transparency, if you care or not, it's been modeled using the Poisson process, which is just a mathematical way of randomizing numbers or entries in a system. It's used a lot in Q theory, if you ever did statistics. But this is a COTI's cluster, and you can see on here, so the black dots on this are confirmed transactions. The blue are validated, and the orange is a source transaction. So you can see these source transactions. I'm actually going to restart this again so you can see. Restart, reset, ding, 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 ding. So the orange dots will show up, and there will be a bunch of them, and you can see them clustering together. And those orange dots are then verifying, each verifies 2 new transactions. And when those have verified, that they turn, when it's verified transactions, turns blue, and when it turns blue after it has been verified, it turns black. So that's kind of the scale of this. And when I talked about in the beginning, I talked about exponential scalability. You'll see what I'm talking about as we're kind of talking through this. And you can obviously zoom in, zoom out, and like kind of move things around. I'm not very good at this with my mouse. There we go. So you can see how this is going to get exponentially bigger as you go into this cluster, and as more transactions get added, the more transactions that are on the cluster, the faster it will be able to verify all those transactions, because naturally there's going to be more options. And you can see this thing will get exponentially bigger. But you can come in here and twist this thing around, and you can click on a transaction, and you can see the verification chain, if it will let me do that. Come on, there you go. You can see the verification chain for each transaction. It'll give you a transaction ID, so that one was 224, and trust was 85. So it found 3 others, 78 and 87. It'll find other transactions with like trust scores to verify. So pretty neat technology. This is very similar, not very similar, but you can see how big this thing is getting. Like, it's getting bigger a lot faster now, and as this simulation goes, it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. This is much like it's straying away from blockchain, a lot like an IOTA with the Tangle ledger is doing, or a hash graph style is doing. It's simply a different distributed ledger method that's aimed to solve that scalability issue that we know cryptocurrencies do have. So when we move into the white paper, I gave you like a brief overview of what this is. We're going to kind of dial in a little bit more into this, into more in depth. So just for context, 3 big key areas of this: cross-border e-commerce, online marketplaces, and peer-to-peer commerce. The shortcomings face, I'm going to read this word for word because it's spot on. The shortcomings faced by existing payment solutions when handling these new payment scenarios is the lack of trust. That's the main shortcoming. They're all attributed to that. To cross-border e-commerce, the lack of trust between issuers, and acquirers located in different jurisdictions result in high fees and low approval rates, like I talked about before. That risk mitigation factor that a lot of banks naturally have built in, lots of high fees for that buyer-seller protection, and sometimes it just gets kicked out for no apparent reason. Online marketplaces, long-tail distribution results in the need for marketplaces to internalize costly mediation functions normally administered by card networks. So that's what I was talking about. A lot of your online retailers will have to absorb a lot of high fees and build that into their cost model when they're making so everything naturally may get a little bit cheaper. You might not notice it, but 3 to 4% is a lot when you're talking about millions and millions of dollars in payments. And lastly, in peer-to-peer transactions, the lack of trust between parties that do not know one another inhibits the growth of peer-to-peer commerce. It's why you would never go have someone deliver something on Craigslist to your house. That's why you just pick a Walmart in a town near you and meet there. Like, you never would go to your house. The universal lack of trust represents a major source of friction, preventing buyers and sellers everywhere from transacting to their fullest potential. Totally agree. So we're going to go down to objectives briefly, and we're going to go to the COTI ecosystem and talk a little bit about a cool sheet they've got. Actually, it's on objectives, which is great. I thought it was in the ecosystem. So they looked at all of these key factors, and they said, what is the best solution? And they came up with it. So this is Exhibit A here. It gives you several different factors to look at with traditional card networks, digital currencies, and the objective that COTI is going to do. And you can read about a lot of these in their technical white paper. If you want to, there's a business overview in the technical portion. If you want to download the technical portion, it's on their website. I'm not going to go through that with you because that would be a 3-hour video. I don't really want to do that. I want to give you an idea of what the project is to allow you to make your own decisions about it. Governance, so traditional card networks, centralized. We all know that. That's no big secret. That's not unique to COTI. I mean, cryptos are decentralized. We know that. Scalability is unique to COTI from a digital currency perspective. This says approximately 20 transactions per second. I think they're talking about like not early stage Bitcoin, but I mean, Bitcoin has low TPS. We know that. There's a lot that boast much higher, up to tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands, as some say a million, which I think that's credits, says it's a million TPS. You don't realize how fast that is, and honestly unnecessary that is. No one would need to do a million transactions per second. That would be like 0.5% of the United States doing a transaction in 1 second. You don't need that. But like a traditional PayPal or a credit card network can do 65,000 TPS, which there's a lot of transactions going on around the world, so they've got a lot of room for scalability there. COTI will boast 10,000 plus TPS, and obviously as that COTI cluster gets a little bigger, I think they get nearer to 10,000 and up, which is nice. Reliability, which low, particularly in cross-border context, which I talked about with the risk mitigation thing. I don't want to go over that again, so it sounds like a broken record. But digital currency reliability is also low. But COTI's objective is high, irrespective of industry or jurisdiction, and that kind of comes down in here to this compliance is tied into that too. Buyer-seller protection, I talked about that. It's centralized and it's very, very costly from a traditional card network perspective. Digital currencies, there isn't really buyer-seller protection. There's a lot of them. Like if you send, it always says the protection is do not send Ethereum Classic to this Ethereum address. That's like the only buyer-seller protection. There's no really thing built in. This one will be decentralized and efficient. The transaction costs are high for cross-border stuff. I mean, some places don't even allow American Express because the transactions are high. Digital currencies are typically low cost. Some of them are a little bit higher. Some of them are very, very low. COTI's objective will be 0 to low cost. We talked about that a second ago. The trust model, it's totally trust-based, is traditional card networks. And then they're both, digital currencies is trustless, which is not relying on trusted third parties. COTI's objectives can be trust generative, like you have an incentive to be trustworthy in that COTI cluster network, because the least amount of trust, the lower your trust score, the slower your transaction fees are going to be. From how I read into it, ease of use. Right now, traditional is very easy to use. Everybody, it's convenient. It's been the way forever, and that's why people are using it. It's complicated for most buyers and sellers to use digital currencies because it's just, A, I mean, a lot of people don't know about it, but B, it is a little bit complicated to use them. COTI's objective, very, very easy, very simple, one interface, fast, near instant, near free transactions. And then compliance, cryptos are largely unregulated. We know that. COTI is going to be fully compliant and welcoming of regulation, supposedly. I'm curious to see once they have their actual working product there, once they have their MVP or their alpha beta test out, going, what kind of regulation or regulatory hurdles they'll have to jump. That's going to be interesting. That actually, I may want to add that into a negative, is what regulatory hurdles are they going to have to jump to be the true PayPal of crypto. But let's kind of go down here into the COTI ecosystem. So introduction to the cluster, talk about that very briefly a little bit in the overview, but it's based on a directed acyclic graph, and it's gonna it consists of transactions that propagate in a under or unidirectional pathway, so they're kind of go in one direction, but it's not a true blockchain. While greater scale in blockchain-based networks leads to adverse effects on network usability, which we talked about, the DAG-based network, greater network usage leads to improved scalability. That's what I was talking about. It's almost exponential. Like the more that it's used, the faster that it will go. So there's a positive correlation between number of users and transaction confirmation rates, which is huge in cryptocurrency. That's one of the big deals. And it's also, I mean, low to no fees, which is a lot like the Tangle ledger from IOTA. But this is implementing that into a payment processing network protocol, which is pretty cool. This obviously makes it ideal for this network protocol because you've got to compete with PayPal and you've got to be fast. You've got to be near free to have a leg up on them at all. Confirmation process, each transaction represented by the trust score. If you want to see how those trust scores are calculated with the technical white paper, I'm not going to go over that in this video. It must validate 2 previous transactions with a similar trust score threshold. So like I mentioned, 85 is your trust score. You're going to validate transactions with an 83, 87. You're not going to get a 98, and you're not going to get a 60 because there's no point in doing that. There's absolutely no point in having that validation method in there. It's solely used so you're validating like transactions, and so it's an incentive to get that trust score up a little bit. As transactions are attached to the cluster, they collectively form trust chains, which as we looked at earlier, the transactional sets characterized by similar trust score thresholds. Those were those red lines. That forms a mini trust chain. Those red lines that we looked at in the simulation is what that is. But as we come down here, so there are going to be nodes. There's full nodes, DSP, and history nodes. This is a depiction of the DSP node, which is, there's a new transaction here, which is that bold circle, if you can see it on your screen. 2 other source transactions of similar must be validated. So the trust score here is 67. You've got to verify 65 and a 68. New transactions validate our transaction, which is 67. So you've got several new transactions now in this chain that are all validating each other. And then the transactions confirmed by the path of the highest cumulative trust score. And the cumulative score is bold, and it says in the path of the highest, and it's highlighted in green. You can't really see that, the path that's highlighted. But that's kind of what a DSP node is. That's a double spend prevention node. And it's a solution to one of the key challenges faced by DAG-based cryptos. It's going to maintain an updated copy at the cluster of any given point in time and monitor transactions to mitigate some of those double spending attacks. And it says to run a DSP node, a large amount of COTI must be deposited in a specialized multi-signature account. If you've got a multi-sig account with a large amount of COTI that's yet to be determined, you're doing pretty well. And then the trust scoring mechanism, we kind of talked about this. I don't really want to dive too deep into that. It's just know this. Trust scoring is performed in a granular, dynamic way to provide high-resolution insight into a party's behavior. So trust score is basically strictly based on your behavior and your interaction with the blockchain. That's really all you need to know. You need to know the ins and outs of how it's actually calculated. But coming down here, I really want to talk about the native currency briefly, and then kind of go through the roadmap and the team. So the digital currency is obviously COTI. That's going to be their ticker on CoinMarketCap, on every other website, CoinCheckup, whatever you use, COTI. And for payments, COTI coins function as a medium of exchange. That's the main function of this, because COTI is going to work in that ledger. No other cryptos, to my knowledge, are going to work in a blockchain-based crypto is not going to work in the COTI cluster. It's just going to be this coin. So that, automatically has utility for the coin. But it functions as a medium of exchange. It can be used when making and receiving payments in the COTI ecosystem. So through their platform, their network, whenever that is released. Mediation, this is actually kind of cool. So mediators stake and payouts are denominated in COTI coins, and I actually kind of want to go over this very quickly. So the mediation system, which is going to handle buyer-seller disputes, this is that buyer-seller protection that I was talking about earlier, is done through third-party mediation. So in order to provide buyers and sellers with protections against errors, fraud, and counterparty abuse, mediators have to take responsibility if the dispute arises within the network. So all that means is there are going to be mediators that are going to be rewarded in COTI tokens for settling these disputes if there ever are. And we know there's going to be payment disputes. It's an immutable fact. There are going to be payment disputes anytime you're dealing with merchants and consumers. You have them all the time, and they got to get solved somehow. So that's where these mediators will actually come into play. I wanted to kind of mention that. I forgot to mention it before. Let's go back down to native currency. And then merchant rolling service. So share the merchant's transactions. It's temporarily set aside to cover potential business risk. That's kind of like a little bit of a safe hedge. And then node operators will be incentivizing COTI coins, much like, I don't know if I said that right, COTI coins, much like a masternode system. And then all fees will be using that COTI payable in COTI coins, which just makes that way easier. So let's kind of go over the team and the roadmap. So the team is pretty large. That's one of the things. I like the large team. They've got a lot of big names on here. You look at IBM, you're looking at Intel, Yahoo. This guy is, their CEO has founded a bunch of different companies. Tech Chain Solutions, a couple blockchain researchers, Plus 500, HSBC. You have PricewaterhouseCoopers like flown in here. On the advisors, you've got a guy, he held a senior position at Bain Capital, which previous presidential candidate in the U.S., Mitt Romney, founded in the mid-'80s. Fun fact on the Crypto 99 channel. But you've got Investec Bank in London, both co-founders of Wings, president of Processing.com. You got a lot of big name backgrounds from a lot of these guys, which that's why it was a positive on my overview. Now into one of the negatives on my overview. So COTI's roadmap sets out the key launch milestones between now and the end of 2021. I traditionally do not like roadmaps that are more than a year, or even 2 is kind of stretching it for me. This one goes 2+ to 3 years, but actually the end of 2021 will be 3.5 years. So Q4 of this year, so you still got to wait a few months, which the ICO doesn't ends at the end of July, but whatever. The consumer wallet prototype, trust score server prototype. So a lot of prototypes are going to start coming out in the 4th quarter, which just means October, November, December. And then Q2 2019, consumer wallet launch, decentralized mediation type deals or prototypes. A lot of the launches will happen Q2 of next year. So you're basically a year away from a full product or a launch of any kind of wallet of any type. And then at the end of that year, they're going to launch the currency exchange. And then 2020 is when you're going to have debit cards. So you're looking at basically a year before you've got anything viable that you will actively be able to use in the world. So if you're looking at this from an investment perspective, there's kind of 2 phases of this. One, you could look at it as, wow, their idea is top notch, and you cannot deny that. The idea and the technology and the drive behind this is top notch at worst. It may be, if there's another level, it is. And you can look at projects like an EOS that has a multi-billion-dollar valuation. It's still technically an ICO with no product yet. You can look at it that way and say, well, you've got room to grow here. But you can also look at it as, okay, I really think this is going to take off once the actual product is launched, and make your decision that way. Or you could say, this roadmap's too long, nobody's going to give a shit for a long time, I'm not going to invest, I'll buy it on an exchange. Those are your 3 options. You've got to pick which one fits your goals in cryptocurrency, whichever one you feel the most comfortable with, obviously. I personally think this, and this is obviously my personal opinion, not financial advice, is not meant to sway you to invest one way or the other, but my personal opinion is this could be one of those that the idea will take this a lot farther than you think it will pre-product. And that's kind of how I'm treating it from an investment perspective. The other thing that I couldn't find was a soft cap. That really doesn't matter in my opinion that I can't find a soft cap. It's more of like a neutral fact from a tokenomics perspective. But the coins are going to ICO at 10 cents. The hard cap's 25 million, which is it's a little bit high, but it's not that high. It's not crazy. The only other thing I don't like about this from a tokenomics perspective is only 30% of the tokens are going to be sold. That actually needs to go on my negatives. Only 30% of the tokens are going to be sold. The rest is going to be reserved. It's going to have 15% held for the team, which is going to be locked again, but 15 is a little bit high. Normally it's 10 to maybe 12 for the team. 10% for advisors and such of the works. They got a bunch of advisors, so I do get that. It's typically like a 1% per advisor type deal. But I wish they would have sold more of the tokens. I would like to have seen a 50 plus. Typically, like I like seeing 65, 75%. That's a really good number in my opinion. But I mean, is it like a huge red flag that's going to make me run away? Not in my opinion. But I would have liked to see some more of that sold. But I hope you guys got something out of this video. I hope you learned a little bit about COTI. I hope you liked the way I did it with giving you a little bit of, if you made it all the way this far, giving you an overview at the beginning so you don't have to watch 20 plus minutes of video at this point, 25, 26 minutes of video to kind of get an overall view of it. If you like the method, obviously, and then the project, hit that thumbs up button as well as that subscribe button and notification bell down below. And I actually forgot to mention this very briefly. I was going to say join their Telegram. Their Telegram's got 36,000 members in it. That's a lot. They've done a great job on the hype from a social media perspective. So join their Telegram, ask whatever questions you have down in that Telegram. And speaking of Telegram, and I'm gonna throw a Discord in, join our Telegram and our new Discord channel. We got over 1,000 members now in less than a week, which is ridiculous. The links for all of that, as well as all the COTI information, will be in the description box down below. But again, thank you for watching the video. I hope I brought you the value I aim to bring you every single time, and I look forward to bringing you that value next time.